Greatness, they say, is not achieved by never falling, but by rising every time we fall. It is only over when we stop trying. The fear of failure can be very limiting. But is failure really the end of the world? Is it a reason to stop trying, or an opportunity to find a new way to try again? Today on Chapters, we're talking about the concept of failure. And I have the author of the book, Bounce Back Up, Pastor Charles Abraham. You are welcome to Chapters today.
Thank you, Toyin.
Thank you for being here. And you've just written a very, I came across this book not too long ago. And as I started, I didn't drop it till I stopped.
Wow.
So what inspired you to write a book on failure and title it Bounce Back Up?
Failure is a universal subject.
Certainly.
It happens to everybody. Mm-hmm. But I've discovered in life that most people are not prepared for it. The real inspiration to write the book, I would say maybe two stories. First one was I was invited to speak at Faith Foundation to a group of young entrepreneurs who have been trained to run their businesses. And I really had another subject I wanted to speak on, which was more like sexy and more like business-like, pump them up. But I really felt uncomfortable. I felt the Lord was telling me to speak on failure and how to recover from a failure. And most businesses fail in the first 5 years. Most entrepreneurs fail many times before they finally get it right. So I started speaking on this subject. I felt they would not like it. And I can say that it was a 50-50 thing on the day. People didn't really, some people were not very happy. I said they were going to fail. And in Nigeria, we always say it's not my portion and all that. So, but I spoke on failure and I spoke about principles of recovery. And try to encourage them that, look, when you do hit that place, you would recover. But then I began to deepen my knowledge on it, studied the Bible a bit more, and I saw principles in the Bible that can really help you, especially from the life of David. So that's one of the major reasons. But the other things, I believe God just wanted me to write. It was an inspiration from God, yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
But why the story of David? Because there's so many stories of failures in the Bible. Why did you pick David and then this particular story?
Yeah. I think possibly it just really captured the essence of what I wanted to speak about. I felt strongly that first David was a man's man. Or David is a man's man. He's a very strong king, warrior king, someone that you would expect always to get it right. And then he really messed up a number of times. And this was one of
times.
Yes, and this was one of the major ones where he left his flanks open. So in looking at how he recovered, and also not just him, but also the men that were with him, I saw there that, there's a real story here and principles that God has embedded in that whole area that can help people. And that's why I chose him. And I personally like David a lot. Apart from Jesus in the Bible, I think he's my favorite character.
David is your second character.
Yes.
So for those wondering, he picked the story of David, and this was when he had gone to fight with the Philistines against the Israelites.
Yes.
And he had left his family, and all of them had left their families at Ziklag.
Ziklag, yes.
And by the time they returned, the women were gone, the children were gone, they had been plundered by the Amalekites, and everything was gone.
Yes.
And then David's men turned against him.
Yes.
Which was the most interesting part.
Yes.
And they wanted to kill him.
Kill him, yeah.
Now, for David, how, and coming from the story, what should be our first reaction in a time of crisis?
I don't think it is really what your first reaction should be, but what really happens.
What really happens?
What really happens. I mean, if you find yourself in a time of crisis, obviously your emotions, just go.
They won't cloud your logic.
And, like I said in the book, David cried. His men cried. But it was not just like a cry of, oh, we lost. They cried till they had no more strength. They were really broken. And I think, a lot of people ignore that part of life. In fact, men try to hide that. And I don't think it's right. And so, for me, allow that to happen. Go through the motions of mourning, go through the motions of crying. Whatever the pain is, express it, because it's part of your recovery. And so I would say, that most times you really have no control over, and if you try to control it, you are just doing yourself an injustice or harming yourself, because what you keep in, you will later on implode. It's going to come out some way, and you will not have any control over it the day it comes out. So it's good to allow it to run at that time. But the point is, after you cry for a while, you stop crying, and then you must start facing up to things.
Yes, you actually wrote a chapter on that, men crying, and the concept of, in our society, a man that cries is not a strong man.
He's a weak man.
He's a weak man.
Totally
and so
wrong.
men tend to keep the emotions in. And you said if you are to recover from a setback, you must have the emotional maturity, which also actually is a sign of strength. To allow yourself to feel the pain for your loss and express it. Because whatever you bottle up will someday find an outlet. So it's important for men to let those emotions happen. So when you finish crying, what next?
Well, the next thing for me will be to look up and begin to ask God.
Is it really easy to look up?
Well, you have to find that place. I've discovered that I can tell personal stories if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
Recently, towards the end of last year, we had a very, very tragic situation in our own family. My first son passed away. He was 26. And I'd written this book, but not published. Of course, it was such a shock. We're devastated. I was in Nigeria, I was in England. We had to travel to England to go and see him. It was really a mixed up time. But in the process, I stopped and I looked up. I said, God, what really happened here? What is going on? I'm a pastor. I've been pastoring people, looking at me. Why would I lose my son at that crucial age? But it was a very, very interesting time because God did speak to me. And He gave me a perspective that enabled me to be able to continue. If God didn't speak to me, then I don't think I would have been able to survive it. I think I would have been broken, so shattered that I would not be able to come back up. But God spoke to me. And I think, when you are going through a time of trouble or a time of hardship, you must always remember that there is a God that knows. And He knew about it long before it took place. And He already has your back anyway, even in the circumstance. Sometimes He doesn't protect you from things. Some things happen. But He knows how He's going to get the glory through it. And so in this context, God just told me, first and foremost, get one perspective. Your son is with me. This kind of, may sound like trivial now, but it was big for me. Because when He said, your son is with me, and he's happy, and it's the best he can be, it kind of gave me a bit of comfort. Okay, I know he's with somebody that really loves him more than I can love him. That's the first thing. Second thing, He told me, He said, if you are feeling sorry, remember that it's not about him, it's about you. You are feeling sorry about yourself, not about him. He's fine. So deal with that. I'm not saying don't cry, but please don't let that overrun your life. And the third thing He told me was, you have a family still here. Not just your nuclear family, but you have a family, a church. You have people all over the world that are going to look at you in this time. Your witness is very important to me. And these three things help me. These were perspectives that helped me to go through. So I would say focusing on the Lord is a very, very key thing. Very key. And you have to find that place. Especially if you are a person of faith and you have a faith, then you should find the God of your faith in times like that.
In times like that. Okay. Much more with Pastor Charles Abraham. We'll be right back. We are still watching chapters and we're talking about failure today, the phenomenon of failure, that universal thing that happens to everyone. Looking at it through the book, Bounce Back Up. And Pastor Charles Abraham, before the break, you just shared with us a very personal story of the loss of your son. Thank you for sharing that story. And in your book, you talked about, so after you've cried and all of that, there's always the first step to take. Sometimes the energy to take the first step takes a lot. I mean, even for David, after his men cried and they said, they were going to kill him, then the Bible says then he strengthened himself in the Lord, then he then called the priest. How do you sort of, sometimes when you're really down, find the energy to take the first step?
What I've discovered is that when you hit what we call rock bottom, and there's nowhere else to go, then you need to look up. Because there's nowhere else to go. I mean, and honestly, it is the place of the greatest, probably one of the greatest manifestations of God in a person's life, is when they hit that point. Because then everything is brass tacks. There's nothing, you're not hiding, you're not, you are really open at that stage. And then you look up. It's not really about prayer or things like that.
Or some serious...
No. It's not about being active in the spirit. It's not anything like that. It's just a place of surrender. And then looking up and saying, Lord, is there a way out of this? And being honest with yourself that you need that help. That you need that help, that you genuinely need God to come to your rescue now. Otherwise, it's over.
Because
and that's it.
Left to you, there's nothing you can even do
There's
in
no
your
way
own
out of
strength.
it. Yes, there's no way out of it.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
But moving from there, and I like your chapter 7. So you've taken the first step. Then you realize that there's so many losses.
Yeah.
What do I even have? What is in my hands to do? And then there's so little.
Yeah.
At that point, sometimes these things can be very logical, but in the practicality of working it out, life can weigh you down. With the little that you have, how do you then begin to, how do you even, talk about the concept of having your little and starting with your little?
With David, he just looked around himself and saw one Amalekite guy coming back, or an Egyptian guy coming back. Yeah. And he recognized an opportunity when he saw the guy. And he asked him, look, who are you? He said, I'm an Egyptian. I work for the Amalekites. They abandoned me because I was ill. And David looked after him. And then this guy became the key to finding out where the Amalekites were and bringing his family back. So in the situation when you have a disaster, there's some scraps around you. There's always a scrap somewhere. That scrap can be valuable. When Paul suffered a shipwreck on the way to Rome, the boat was broken up into pieces, but those fragments became
the things that took them to land.
Became the thing that took them to land. Same thing with the woman who her husband died and left her in debt with 2 sons. When the prophet came to her and said, what do you have in your house? She said, I haven't got anything. The guy said, you must have something. He said, okay, I have 1 jar of oil. But the jar of oil became her breakthrough. So there's always something around you, like a scrap from that situation, that can become your lever for moving forward. And you must recognize it. So,
are there certain ways you can recognize it? Because, for example, the Egyptian that David met on the way did not really seem, when we say that God speaks to us in different packages, and someone else would not have looked at that as the opportunity. Are there certain ways to recognize that opportunity when it comes to you?
I would say you need the grace of God to really identify that as an opportunity. You need discernment to recognize. There's no formula to it. It's just understanding that what may look like scraps or fragments from your disaster can actually be the building block for the future. And not to throw everything away.
And I'll relate it to another thing you did in the book was you shared for every chapter, you had practical stories. I mean, you shared stories of people like Tina Turner, Robert Downey Jr., Andrea Gassi. But I like the story of Ade Feso, maybe because he's Nigerian. And you brought it home. Can you share that story with the viewers?
Yes. Mr. Ade Feso was my father-in-law.
Oh!
Yeah, so I know his story firsthand. What happened was he was a very, very diligent, very forthright man who worked in a government establishment, Luth. He was the head of catering, professional man, but he wouldn't take no for an answer, and he was not a compromiser. So at some point, they tried to get rid of him. They cooked up a story, and he got fired from the job. And when he got fired, he had nothing, no more work. His house was taken away from him because he was living in the quarters in Luth, and they had to go and live in a friend's or family house.
And he had 6 children.
6 children, 1 bedroom. It was bad. But somehow, a young man, man that he had worked with and who supplied the kitchen to one of his establishments, remembered him because he was looking for a partner in Nigeria. So he came and asked him, look, Mr. Defeso, we have this plan. Are you interested? He said, well, by the way, I don't have a job. So whatever comes my way, I'll take. So he was made the local managing director of the company.
So that's almost recognizing the scrap.
Yes, it's a scrap. It's a scrap. You know, they made him managing director of the local Nigerian part of the company. The company began to do well. He was given a really nice house in Apapa with swimming pool and everything, and maybe 10 times the salary he was earning before.
Wow.
So the man became very comfortable, but it didn't end there. He became a partner in the company abroad. You know, and you know, he was able to recover from that situation. My wife always told me that even though it was a sad time, it was one of the happiest times. That yes, you know, they suffered that loss, but the way he came back was so beautiful, that, you know, you just wonder, you know. So, I mean, and I that story touched me when he spoke to me about it. In
fact, I like the fact that I said after a couple of years, Nigeria then issued an Indianization decree and made it mandatory for all the companies to leave. So it became the CEO of the company here.
Yes, and acquired majority shares, but also became part of the company even abroad.
Recognizing the scraps.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, there was another thing. You brought out so many dynamics from the story of David that, you know, reading that story I'd never seen. You mentioned that when they had gone and when they were going to fight, there were 600 men. And 200 said, we are tired, we can't go on. Yeah. And they stayed back. But when they went and they plundered, and then they came back, the others said, we are not going to share our loot. Yeah. Which truly, when I read, I could have been part of those that would say,
of course,
they did not go with us.
Of course.
They cannot share the loot with us.
Of course.
For you, what lesson did you bring out from that trait of David?
Yeah, the title of that chapter is, I think, Be Magnanimous. Yes. David recognized something. That yes, those guys could not cross the brook of Besor because they were tired, because they were weary, and all that. But they are part of his kingdom. They are part of his army. And he doesn't want an army that is divided. So when they were able to cross over, recover everything, and come back, though 400 said, look, we shouldn't share anything, he said, no, we should share. All right? Because they've been part of this process. Okay, they didn't complete, but they are part of the process. And this way, he was able to use that one method to unite his guys back and still build his army. He would have lost his army, to be honest. I mean, because the 200 guys wouldn't have got anything, and they would have left, but who knows who else will follow them. That one thing he did galvanized the army and brought, you know, unity there. And everybody felt good. He said, look, this is not a time to be vindictive. It's not a time to try and get one back. This is a time to let everybody be happy. And for me, I think, you know, when you are going through your recovery and you really have a victory, you need to celebrate it properly. And you don't have to snigger at those or even try and be vindictive against people that were involved in your downfall. You must always be magnanimous. You must always tell them, look, perhaps if I was in your shoes, I'll do the same thing. You know, it's just a principle of life. But people always think they will revenge. And now it's my time to get my own back. But you're a small person if you do that. You haven't got a large heart. If you've got a large heart, you must embrace your enemies and tell them, look, yeah, I understand what you did, but I'm not going to hold this against you. Let's move on. You know.
So many lessons to still learn. We have to go on a short break now, but so much more from the book Bounce Back Up after the break. We'll be right back. Yeah, welcome back to Chapters, and we're still talking about how to recover from times of difficulty or times when we have failed, especially when the failure is something that you caused by yourself. And Pastor Charles Abraham is still here with me on the show. And that's what I want to talk about now. Sometimes in failure, there's even the feeling guilty and the guilt weighing you down because maybe if I had done better, like David, maybe if I did not go and fight with these people. How do you learn? I want us to also talk about forgiveness here. How do you learn to forgive yourself?
I think one of the biggest lessons a person can learn in life is that you are not perfect. You are flawed as a human being. It doesn't matter how great people tell you are. You have to recognize you are flawed. And when you see your flaws, you must acknowledge them. But don't let them become the reason why you don't move forward. The only person that is perfect that has ever lived is Jesus. Apart from him, nobody else is perfect. So we are all flawed people. But despite our flaws, we can do our best. If you fail and you haven't done well at something, recognize why you didn't do well. But don't beat yourself over the head. Sometimes when you have an opportunity to redo something, you do it a lot better. I take it as a point of research. You've just gone for a research, and now you're coming back to implement properly. So for me, I see a lot of people, they fail, and they are depressed.
Yes.
And they're down. And I ask myself, don't you recognize that you have learned a lesson, and that this lesson can actually be your stepping stone to greatness? You know, and so a lot of people don't see that. They think, oh, I messed up, I can't recover. People jump out of skyscrapers in New York because stock exchange crashed. And I look at the guy and say, what's happening to you? You made the money. You made the money. And you are still in existence. Yeah. The money is gone, but you can still make the money again. So don't kill yourself. You know, and that's one of the challenges I find, and one of the reasons why I really wrote this book is to help people to recognize that when you fail is not the end. Actually, you don't fail until you stop trying.
You said that.
You don't fail until you stop trying. So you can always come back, and you can always do it a lot better.
Exactly.
You know, a lot better. And you know, you've acquired skills whilst you were failing. You acquired skills, you acquired experiences. Next time you go through those processes, you can actually tell people, yeah, of course, that look, this was what I did wrong the last time. Now I won't do that again. Lessons are learned, you know, from failure. And if you are astute and you are sharp enough, you should recognize why you failed. You should recognize it and just note it. So whenever you have the opportunity, just improve on it. Yes. Yeah, do the right thing.
You know, you remind me of who created the light bulb? Thomas Edison.
Thomas Edison, yes.
And I don't know how true this is, but I always say when they say he did it 1,000 times, even if he did it 100 times, if it was me, by the 10th time, I'll say, let's go and invent something else. You know, that the man can continue. And they always say for him was 1,000 ways not to do it.
Exactly.
And so that's how you keep learning and learning. And it takes focus. It takes focus. But you have a concept in the book that I like. In chapter 11, the finishing mentality. Please explain to us that concept of the finishing mentality when you're about to recover your loot from the enemy.
I have discovered in life that comfort and appearance of success can limit your ability to finish properly. So you must always remember what the goal is. The goal is, I've got to recover everything. I've got to recover everything. So you may get to a place where you are recovering some things, and then you just think, well, it's okay, let me stop here. No, you must go through to the end. And that, for me, is a mindset. Is a mindset. The mindset that says, I'm not satisfied until I've done the very best I can do in this situation. And so I always say, if you are fighting an enemy, all right, let's use spiritual warfare context, and you are dealing with an enemy. David was able to bring Goliath down with the sling and the stone, but he did not stop there. He went there, took the sword of Goliath and cut off his head. He made sure he finished the job. Finishing. And I think it's a mindset. It's a mindset for people who want to recover from failure to remember, you know, that what you did and failed at, and you are coming back to do, you must do very well and excel and even go beyond what you actually set as a limit for yourself. And that way you would always be successful if you do that. If you do that. That's why they say the enemy of best is good. It's good. It's good. So don't stop at good. There is always a better and a better and a better. Yeah. We've talked so much about this book. On a final note, what would be your advice to anyone watching who feels that, you know what, I can't start again? If someone calls you a failure, they're trying to define you. And you can either accept the definition or reject it. But it's not with what you say, it's what you do. And you can always come back. You can always come back. As long as you have life. In fact, beyond life. Beyond life. In fact, beyond life. Because Jesus was crucified on the cross, he died.
Rose again.
And everybody thought it was over. But 3 days later, we all know the story, came out of the grave. And today he's Lord of all. So for me, giving up and saying you can't do it again is doing a disservice to the Creator, the God that made you. Because he has put inside of you the power to come back. Every human being has it. That's why when you look at stories of people who have gone through incredible suffering, you wonder, how did they make it through that? It's that quality that is in the human spirit that enables the human being to come back and to fight back. I mean, I'm a lover of Israel, and I studied a lot about the Holocaust. And if you hear the stories of the Holocaust, you will wonder how a nation could come out of that. But they did. They did.
And they came out strong.
And they came out strong, and today they're one of the best nations in the world. But they had that issue that almost destroyed the entire nation. So if you're out there and you think it's over, let me tell you it's not over. You can always come back, and you will come back better.
Thank you so much for being a guest on this show, and thank you for sharing and pouring out your heart. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure.
Bounce Back Up. I think it's a book that everyone should have. As we've said, failure is universal. And to close, I'd actually read a part of the book. And he says, failure can happen, but it does not define you. It is an event, not an identity. Where you are and what has happened to you is not your story. It is merely a chapter in your story. And as we say in the business of filmmaking and in the business of media, it is only a twist in the dramatic arc of your story. You are not a failure. You can always come back. And do not stop at good. Aim for best and better than best. Thank you so much for watching. Keep soaring, and God bless you.